Welcome everybody. I'm so happy to see you all here tonight. My name's Kristen. I'm one of the librarians here at the library. And this evening's program is Protecting Dark Skies. It's one of our programs in partnership with the Batavia Environmental Commission. And we have been recording these thanks to BATV, who are here tonight. And these recordings are on the YouTube channel for you to be able to watch later if you want. You can spread the word, let other people know that we have these done. So thank you to BATV for doing that. You may also be interested in an upcoming program, Naloxone in Action, Empowering Communities to Prevent Overdose. This will be Thursday, November 21st. At 7 p.m. And you can sign up for this and other programs on our calendar at bataviapubliclibrary.org. And now, let me introduce our presenters. Adam Kreutzer is a local designate for Dark Sky International, who grew up in rural Michigan. Adam is very passionate about all of nature, and when not working, does his best to save dark skies. Barb McKittrick is the Environmental Education Manager at the Forest Preserve District of Kane County. Barb loves to ignite in others a passion for enjoying and protecting our natural areas. Welcome, Adam and Barb.
Do you want us to use the mic? Would you prefer?
Will it be better for the recording?
Better for you?
Yes, please do.
I'm used to wandering around.
We can have you disconnect it.
Can I? Yeah.
Yeah.
Since I'm short, it might actually work better.
Good. Okay.
Okay. It's probably better for those of you in the back too. So thanks for having us. As Adam was telling you before Kristen introduced us, we've been working together on telling people about the beauty of a dark night sky and why that sky is not just beautiful but important to all of us and to more than humans, to wildlife, to plants. To many of the creatures that we make our homes with here in Batavia and Kane County. So we've been doing this for 5 years or so, and every time we get to meet new people and talk about this, we're really enthusiastic and we're open to questions, and we'd love it to be as interactive as possible. We have slides to share and stories to tell, but interrupt us at any time. So. As Kristen said, Adam is a delegate with what used to be the International Dark Sky Association, but when did they change their name?
Just this year.
Just this year. So hot off the press here, it's now Dark Sky International. So Adam is our local delegate here, and he manages the Chicago website, so he's been very active. He has a day job too. Adam is an attorney, so he makes time for this passion of his when he's not working at that. So we're going to tag team it here. Adam's going to start out, so I'm going to turn it over to him, and then I'll tell you a little bit about dark skies and wildlife and plants.
Thank you, Barb. Can everybody hear me? All right. Good. Sometimes I wander from the mic because I like to wander while I talk. So Barb is going to address the impact of this blue-white light. And that's really why we're here, blue-white light with LEDs. She's going to talk about the impact of that wavelength on our wildlife friends and also on plants. Otherwise, I'm going to introduce you to the topic. We'll talk a little bit about saving energy. We'll talk a little bit about the effect of this wavelength on our human health, which is very important. And then after Barb presents about the effects on our wildlife friends and plants, we'll talk a little bit about what we can do at home. There's a lot that we can do from the perspective of addressing our municipalities, whether ordinances or other things, or our state with statutes, but I'm going to focus on what we can do at home, because this, like a lot of other things, is a grassroots issue. And to the extent that any of you can take the baton and maybe do something about it, whether it's just at your home or more broadly, thank you. That's why I'm here tonight. So let's start the show. I've been told I have to double click. So yes, I would love it if you would visit our websites. So going back to the first one with Dark Sky International, once known as IDA, please go to www.darksky.org. It's an incredible website. The IDA, now known as DSI, was more or less developed in the 80s. It is a 501c3, and it is the global leader in trying to address dark skies, to preserve what is our nocturnal environment, which at times is 12 hours of our day. 60% of everything on this planet is running around at night. We are not, because we're diurnal. But there's a lot of other wildlife friends, etc., that spend their entire waking existence nocturnally. This is our Chicago chapter. That's our Chicago website, www.idachicago.org. Please visit that. You'll find some things written by yours truly. I don't know if they're written well, but hopefully you'll enjoy reading it. So I just threw this slide in for this presentation, knowing that we had the election. I think for a lot of us, spending time outside looking at the stars can be very therapeutic. It is part of our heritage. We've been on this planet for, not necessarily in a civilized form, but for millions of years. And as civilized human beings for hundreds of thousands of years. And until recently, all of our existence included a dark, natural, nocturnal night. So it's almost like going home when we go outside and we spend some time with our stars. So I want to be a little bit interactive. How many of you, please raise your hand, don't be shy. How many of you are aware of the Milky Way galaxy? Come on, hands, I want to see them. You got to raise them above your shoulder because I can't see them. All right, so it looks like most of you. We are in the Milky Way galaxy. That is our galaxy. Okay? And we're part of the universe. Does anybody want to guess for me how many galaxies are in our universe? Billions. I always have cheat sheets. Oops. $100 to 200 billion galaxies in our universe. And we're just one of them. And there's an estimate that there could be 2 trillion galaxies in our universe as we continue to expand outward. So the Dark Sky International group, if you will, looks at the Milky Way as kind of a marker for what we'd like to be able to see, or at least once again be able to see. How many of you have actually seen the Milky Way? All right.
Years ago.
A long time ago? So what we see in the sky, if I was to go to a beach on Lake Michigan, what I'll see in the sky is I'll see an arm of our galaxy. And I'll be able to see that as it extends from horizon to horizon. It's where we are in the galaxy. It's what we can see. So we want to be able to see it. But unfortunately, most of us no longer can. And that's more or less why Dark Sky International came into existence. It was an astronomy issue. It was an astronomy initiative. And we spent time trying to address how light pollution is affecting that. But now with the introduction of LEDs and new wavelengths at night, we'll be talking to you about the consequences of that form of light. So this picture is from Wisconsin. There you can see an arm of our Milky Way. Isn't that beautiful? How many people think they can go outside tonight and see this? All right, we have to travel far to be able to see it. If you were to go outside without light pollution, let's just say for whatever reason all the lights were turned off throughout our Earth, how many stars do you think you'd be able to see with your naked eyes? Anybody want to give me an estimate? About 5,000 to 6,000. That's what we'd be able to see with our naked eyes. Anybody want to guess for me how many stars we can see in our light-polluted Batavia?
Probably about
10, 20, 30 to 40 to 50. And maybe if we move into a darker area, 100 or more. That's how bad it is right now. There are 200 to 400 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy. But where we are, we can only see about 5,000 to 6,000 on the best of nights. Anybody want to guess how many solar systems there are in our galaxy? In other words, you have a planet actually circling a star. It's about 3,200. We're one of 3,200 solar systems in our galaxy. So astronomy is important. It's part of what we are. We're all part of the universe. We all started with basically the same elements. Most of what we have, 90% of what we have, are shared elements with the rest of the universe. And that's a little picture from Iowa. I didn't take it. My son-in-law took this picture. I was watching this on Lake Michigan this past summer up where we rent. So that's the Aurora Borealis. So not only do we want to have the opportunity to see the stars and the planets and what have you, but we want to be able to see the northern lights, right? Okay, so let's talk about light pollution. That's basically what we're confronted with now. That is a dome of light. So when these lights that are not shielded, that are bright white or what have you, and they might be reflecting off the surface, go up into the sky, they scatter in the water molecules and other garbage that's up there in the sky, and they spread like wildfire. And they form that dome of light. So even though Batavia may not have a lot of light here on the ground, we're still affected by the dome of light that might be created by the city of Chicago and all the other suburbs. And it blankets us. So when you are on Lake Michigan and you look across the sky, look across the lake, what do you see? You see this big halo dome of light. So Van Gogh painted starry skies, all the starry skies that he painted, and he painted many of them back in the 1880s. And back in the 1880s, we did not have light pollution. We didn't have any light pollution. So before that, of course, we had been here for millions, hundreds of thousands of years without it. So here's basically your evolution of light. I am still at the prehistoric level. I still like fires in the backyard, right? Without all that glare from all that white light. Okay, we have candles. I have candles in my house. I'm still a BC creature. Okay. okay? It's not really until the late 1800s and moving into the 1900s that we started to have the introduction of modern light. And it wasn't until really recently, within the past 10 years, that we had the introduction of LEDs. And there's the man who helped us get where we are today. That's Thomas Edison. Back in the 1880s, he basically developed the light bulb. He didn't invent it, but he was a big player in its development and its now widespread use. And you might see that he's holding a bulb that's similar to what we see here. So when I talk about these beautiful ornamental dark sky friendly bulbs, they're made to kind of look like what Thomas Edison is holding now. Thomas Edison actually helped develop and install the first municipal lighting, which was in New Jersey and Manhattan in the late 1880s. So this is a composite here. It starts from the 1950s and moves forward to next year. And the advance of light pollution has now been estimated, based on more current studies, to be advancing at 10% per year globally, as compared to 2%. And a lot of that is because of the introduction of energy-efficient LEDs. So anybody want to guess for me why we have so much light pollution over Lake Michigan? I just talked about it. Well, yes, but the dome of light. So even though Beaver Island and maybe some boats may be the only items, places on Lake Michigan that actually have a light bulb, it's because of all this sky glow, this dome of light, that we have light over Lake Michigan where we wouldn't otherwise have it. And that, of course, is affecting our ability to see our heritage. And this is basically a blow-up. You can go to light pollution map. So if you want to Google, you can go to light pollution map and you can find out where you can find some potentially darker areas. But this is what we're confronted with here with light pollution. So when I go up to Lake Michigan, I go north up near Traverse City, and it's much darker. So I can see the Milky Way and the Aurora Borealis. But when it's growing at 10%, soon that will be gone too. And that's kind of what we're confronted with now. There are dark sky sites that are Dark Sky International certified. Most of our national parks are. There are other places across the world that have satisfied the requirements to get dark sky certification. And that's why we include the dark sky sites there to the right. But otherwise, we're basically addressing inner city and then over to rural skies now. We don't have dark sky sites here in Illinois. So light pollution consequences. There's that light bulb. And I know I already blinded some of you with it. Are you ready? How many people have this at their house? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Soft white bulbs.
I'm going to talk about that, yeah.
Turn it up now.
Yes. But let me show you what happens when we have a shielded fixture. That's the same bulb, but in the shielded fixture. Isn't that better? That's $29.99. This is $29.99. Okay? So anyway, that's that bright white light that affects not just our ability to see the stars, but also us from a health perspective, and also our wildlife friends and our plants, because we're introducing daylight during night when it wouldn't otherwise be here. And that's that daylight bulb 5,000 Kelvin that you can buy at the store. And unfortunately, we just don't know the consequences of that decision. Everybody wants to know about safety. Okay. Well, unless I had that bright white light that's shining up everybody's yard down the street, I'm not safe. Somebody's going to get into my garage and take my whatever. Okay. Even though I'm asleep at 9 o'clock and I can't do anything about it. Unfortunately, more light does not make us more safe. The choice of fixture does not make us more safe. Okay? What makes us more safe is less light and less glare. Glare is so especially important when it comes to security. So who here, especially older folks like me, who here has problems now with these bright white light car lights? Who has to turn away to be able to see the road? Who at points in time when those cars are approaching, you can't see what else is around us?
With that rear view mirror.
Okay? We can't see the pedestrians to our right or our left. We can't see whatever else is there. That's because of glare. It causes our pupils to constrict, our peripheral vision is reduced, and we can't see what is with us here on the ground. If we remove that glare, we are much, much more safe. So here's a nice example, all right? And you can do this at home. When you're confronted with that wall pack light, you can't see well because, of course, your eye is reacting to address that bright white light. But when you're shielded from that light, you can see this dangerous fellow here at the gate, okay? So please do it at your home. So when you think about safety, think about what you can actually see from your window, what you can actually see when you're on the ground outside or wherever you might be. And you'll be amazed how much you learn about the consequences of glare and bright white light with your personal safety. Municipalities are starting to get on board, but it's a difficult task to convince them. Energy waste. So who here was alive when Jimmy Carter was our president? Anybody? I can't believe it, but yes, there are people here. Whose parents would walk around and say, "Turn off the lights, shut the door, turn down the heat"? Well, back then we were aware of the consequences of using too much energy. We've kind of lost that, haven't we? Okay. Well, with these energy efficient LEDs, we now think, well, we can save money. They're 90% more efficient. So we leave them on, we don't care. But they're still burning fossil fuels when they're lit. Light is energy. Light costs money. Maybe not a lot of money, but when you add it up, it's a lot of money. And it also affects carbon. When we keep those light bulbs on at night outside, and we have 5 or 6 of them lighting up not just our yard, but our neighbors' bedrooms, and everybody else within 100 yards, we are burning fossil fuels, and we are contributing to global warming. So if you take away one thing tonight with the idea of why I might want to turn off some of those lights, maybe not all of them, but some of those lights is because we're contributing to climate change. So let me talk about human health real quick before I turn it over to Barb. Who here has heard a little bit about trying to avoid our handheld devices before we go to bed? Okay, don't be afraid to raise your hand above your shoulder. Okay. Well, that's because of the introduction of blue-white light at night. We're being exposed to sunlight at night. And that affects our circadian rhythm. Everything on this planet that breathes, eats, and is otherwise crawling around has a circadian rhythm. Why? Because that's what we have. That's what, for whatever reason, we have. And it triggers the release of hormones and chemicals that restore us and restore most everything else while we sleep at night. Anybody here take melatonin supplements? No? Okay, good. Well, it's darkness that triggers, through what light we receive or don't receive through our eyes, the release from the pineal gland of a hormone known as melatonin, which is the gatekeeper to the release of other chemicals which ultimately help us achieve a good night's sleep. And I think more often than not now, when you're reading an article about how to achieve good health, it addresses the importance of sleep. Because we don't get sleep, and most of us are not getting good sleep for a lot of reasons. One of those reasons is the introduction of this blue-white light at night through our handheld devices, or that light that's coming in through the window outside. Even the small amount of light, blue light, can obstruct the release of melatonin. If we don't get good sleep, we're not restoring. When we have a hard day, it's sleep that restores us. It restores our immune system. It helps us cognitively, it helps us physically. And studies have shown, and there are a lot of studies now, because of this blue-white light that's been introduced to us, that it affects our cognition, it affects our health from a cardiovascular perspective, from an obesity perspective, from a diabetes perspective, and including cancers, especially breast cancers with women who are working at night when they shouldn't otherwise be working. And more studies are suggesting these adverse effects to our health. So we want to remove that blue-white light from our night so that we sleep well. Has anybody had a chance to see this book? It's a great book. It can be a little bit dry, but it tells us about the importance of sleep. And if there's a couple things I'd like you to take away tonight, it's the importance of getting that sleep, 7 to 8 hours, and doing everything you possibly can to achieve that for your physical wellness. And here come the ecological impacts, and my friend Barb.
So, I work for the Forest Preserve District, so I spend a lot of time outside with wildlife and plants, but I'm also a member of the Batavia Environmental Commission. So I'd like to share with you what light pollution and lack of dark skies at night does to animals and plants, but as an environmental commission, we're always trying to not just present problems to people, but solutions. And the good thing about light pollution is that it's pretty easy to solve. And so we're gonna finish up today. Adam's gonna share with you some very simple things that we can all do in our own homes and in our community to address the problem for human health, like Adam was just describing, and for the animals and plants around us. So let's talk a little bit about how the animals in particular are impacted by not having dark skies at night. So there's a lot going on at night. If you ever, take a walk after the sun sets, you can hear insects that you don't hear during the day. You can see bats flying around. There's a whole world out there at night. But we maybe don't think about it as often because we're not always out there at night. We are diurnal. We're active during the day. The things that are happening at night, though, require pure darkness. Animals have adapted themselves, those that are nocturnal, to really thrive and to require darkness to lead their life processes, to find a mate, to eat. So they need darkness. Things that are going on at night with the animal community. They're foraging and hunting, and they're adapted to do this. This is a great horned owl skull. You can see those really big eye sockets. Owls have large eyes with very big pupils to let in a lot of light so that they can find their prey at night, and they require darkness to do that. Prey animals like a rabbit, they're adapted to be outside too at night. They've got a very good sense of smell, and they can find their way pretty easily. Courtship and mating. There's some animals that send out courtship signals that can only be seen at night. The bioluminescent signal of a firefly is a perfect example. Flowering and pollination. Believe it or not, there are some flowers that only open their blooms at night. There's a moonflower, several native species. Tobacco plants, another example, and there are many insects that are perfectly adapted to pollinate these night flowering plants. This is a sphinx moth here. You can see that really long proboscis that goes into that night blooming flower. So it requires darkness for those plants to bloom and to pollinate. And then migration. Most of our birds that migrate at night. And they do that for two major reasons. It's cooler at night so that they're not exposed to the heat of the sun. They don't dry out, they don't require as much water, and there are less predators at night. So it's safer in all regards for them to migrate. And they use celestial cues, the moon as well as a couple of others we'll talk about, to find their way. So again, they need dark skies to really be able to get to their wintering grounds in the fall and their breeding grounds in the spring. So all that's going on while we're in bed sleeping. It's all going on in a deep, dark night. So we always known that there are animals that need darkness to carry on those processes that we just talked about. But it's only been very recently that scientists have started to realize that it's not just night and dark that make these animals and plants thrive. It's the period of uninterrupted darkness that is really important to that. And this term, scotobiology, is a new field of science that was coined very recently to describe that field of research. That has resulted in some of these books that Adam has talked about. So scotobiology, a whole new branch of science that is the study of the biology of darkness. It's a pretty cool word, scoto, darkness, biology, life. So after the scotobiology term was coined at a conference in 2003, it started to appear more and more in scientific journals. That's always where science progress shows up first in peer-reviewed articles. But it started making its way into the popular press. And that's when you know that it's really becoming interesting to the layman, right? When you can go out and find a book at the library, like The End of Night, or Ecological Consequences of Artificial Night Lighting that came out just a few years after the term scotobiology was coined. It even made its way into children's books, so light pollution for children, and it's even in music. This is a CD called Scotobiology from a jazz group in Brooklyn, so you can just span all types of media with darkness. So what is, from the study of scotobiology, what exactly is happening to wildlife when the night is not dark, when there is sky glow, when there are lights that are shining with that blue-white light in your neighbor's yard? How does it impact the wildlife? There's a couple of categories of impact on animals out there at night when there's light pollution of any type, be it direct light, sky glow. One is problems with orientation. So this can be a single animal. Think of a moth drawn to a light. They can't orient themselves to go in the direction they want because they're attracted to that porch light. They're thrown off course. It's also the same with birds. You know, birds are attracted to lit buildings. They want to migrate, or they want to go and find their prey at night, but they're attracted to that lit skyscraper and they crash into it, or they circle it and end up tiring themselves out. So orientation. Predation, another problem that happens if there's light pollution. An owl, for instance, is adapted to find its prey, say a rabbit, at night. But if there's a little bit of light there, his vision is actually impaired. So the predators that are suited to night hunting have trouble if there's light pollution, and the prey, the same thing. There are predators at night, but not as many as during the day. So if there's a little bit of light pollution, for rabbits, let's say, there's other animals that see better in just dim light, not pure darkness. So there's going to be more predators out. It's going to be even more dangerous for those prey animals. Competition. The owls that can hunt really well at night, if it's halfway light out, there are going to be other birds of prey, hawks, that are out hunting at the same time. More competition, whereas if it was purely dark, it's only those animals that are totally suited to darkness that are able to hunt. Reproduction, the example, the animals that require darkness for their mating signals to be seen, no finding a mate, no reproduction, species numbers dwindle. And circadian rhythms, just like Adam mentioned. Humans have it, well, animals have it too, and I'm even going to talk to you at the end about plants have it as well. You wouldn't think so, but they do. So circadian rhythms get thrown off. We need periods of light and dark for all of our bodily processes, and animals do too. So let's talk about some of these individuals. It kind of seems a little bit abstract when we just talk about wildlife, right? But if we look at some of the individual players, I think it'll be even more impactful for you to think about, if I'm leaving my lights on, or if that used car lot down the street, and we've all been down Randall Road, right? We see that sky glow. I live pretty close. I live by Mooseheart. I can see that in the distance. It's just like a sunrise out there. So what does that do to bats? Well, you might say, I really don't care what it does to bats because I don't like bats. Does anyone here actually like them though? I like them too. Number one, I think they're cute. And they eat insects, they eat mosquitoes, right? But so bats are really impacted pretty much by light pollution at night. And the reason that we should care, those of you who didn't raise their hand on the Do You Like Bat quiz, is that bats do eat insects, as I mentioned, insects that cause us irritation and that destroy crops. They also pollinate, Insects aren't the only animals responsible for pollinating our food crops and our flowers. Bats in many parts of the world, not here, do that as well. So they play a role in the environment. With light pollution, the impact that light has on bats is mainly through lights that are on wind turbines. Bats are attracted to the insects that are attracted to those lights. So they're not going to the wind turbine, they're going to the insects that like those lights. When a bat's a mammal, right? It has lungs just like ours. When it approaches a spinning wind turbine, there is a pocket of decreased pressure around that turbine, and the bat gets close to us, and it goes through something called barotrauma. Are there any scuba divers in the audience? Yeah, so if you are, or if you know someone who does, they know that they have to depressurize when they come up from the depths so that they don't get what's called the bends, when dissolved gases in the bloodstream come out of solution. at low pressure, but then cause problems when you come to the top. It's the same with the bats. They get close to those blades and their lungs burst and they die. And this is a big problem with bats. If the lights were not on, the problem wouldn't exist. Or if they were protected in some way or shielded, there are solutions. Insects are also really impacted by light pollution in many ways. Again, you might think, well, I mean, insects include mosquitoes, cockroaches. I really don't care about insects, but you should if you like to eat. I like to eat. Insects are responsible. I've read studies that say 1 out of 3 bites of food that we eat is pollinated by an animal, including insects. They're just critical. Without insects, there would be no life on Earth. They are responsible for pollinating 80% of flowering plants and 75% of our food crops. And nocturnal pollinators, like that hawk moth that I showed you before, and this is a white-lined sphinx moth, they're actually more effective at pollinating. So there's a lot of pollination that's going on at night too with those night flowering plants. So insects are critical to us. They're also a primary food source for many animals in all forms. So the adults are food for birds, and the larval forms are also food for birds and fish. So they're really important in the food chain. Some people eat insects. So they also play a major role in decomposition. Our stacks of garbage would be up to the ceiling in here if we didn't have millipedes and soil decomposers chewing and decomposing garbage. But insects are really in decline. One reason is light pollution, but I think it's important to understand why they're in decline. The first study that really showed we have problems with our insect community was in 2017. There was a group of citizen scientists. Does anyone here do eBird and observe birds or any other type of citizen science project? What kind do you do?
eBird.
You do. Okay, so he's entering his data of birds he observes on a database that's shared with other birders and with scientists so that they can see population dynamics. It's a great and very popular way. But these citizen scientists did a study in Germany, and they looked at the biomass across, that's all insects, in an area of Germany over a period of 27 years. And they found a 75% decline in insects over that time. It was gigantic. And it kind of raised the red flag. There's something going on with insects in the world. After that, a lot of you may have seen this article. It was published in the New York Times, I believe, the insect apocalypse. That term was coined in this article that appeared in the booklet that came out in 2018. And apocalypse is a pretty strong word, right? But I think it's pretty accurate because of the importance of insects. So insects are definitely under threat. It's not all because of light pollution. The biggest problem that insects face is loss of habitat, use of chemicals, herbicides and pesticides. But light pollution has also been found to be a driver of that apocalypse. And there's the article that showed that came out in 2018. That was the insect apocalypse was identified, and a later study in 2020 showed that light pollution was one of the drivers of that. And the reason why does light pollution impact insects, is that when you have, this diagram shows a lot of different insects being attracted to this light here. For example, some prey, like this one here, it's a lightning bug. Its mating signal is obscured in light pollution, like we've talked about. The moth and other insects are attracted to light and makes it easier for the prey to spot them and eat them. Also, When attracted to the light, insects, you've probably seen this on your porch, they're circling, circling, circling all night long. What do you find when you go out in the morning? Dead insects, yeah, just littering the ground. They exhaust themselves. They can't go out and eat, they can't drink water, they just keep flying and dying. And lastly, some insects, just like birds, where is here? Does anyone know what this insect is here? D? What was that? Not a snail, but see, this is his lovely food ball here, made out of something disgusting. Dung beetle, yes. The guy is a dung beetle here. Dung beetles, kind of like birds, navigate using celestial cues. Dung beetles feed on dung, and they break off bits of it, roll it into a ball, and try to roll that ball using celestial cues and magnetic cues away from the main mass, away from all of their friends who are competing for that same food. Try to get into a little private dung picnic area. And with the cues being obscured with light pollution, they can't do that, and they often end up making their way back to, to the original buffet of dung and lose their food. Right? So that's a very unique and weird story of light pollution. The others are probably more understandable, and you knew about them, like the moths on your porch. So insects in decline. Birds are too. And birds, this is probably, if anyone was to say what animal is impacted by light pollution, I bet most of you would know and would say birds. We've all heard about bird strikes. Birds are important, not as important to us humans as insects. We don't depend on them as much, but other animals do. They're part of the food chain. A hawk depends on birds. Anything that eats birds does. We eat some birds, but not songbirds. Since 1970, we've lost a lot of birds. This study came out by the ornithological, it came out in Science magazine actually, showing that North America has lost almost a third of its birds over the last 50 years. This is almost 3 billion birds. So why? Habitat loss is big for birds too. As we build more cities and more strip malls on Randall Road, that's less area for birds. Beyond that, the number one human cause impact to bird populations, does anyone know? Not Adam, who else? You may have one as a pet.
Cats.
Cats, yeah. Cats really do a number on birds. Right after that, though, strikes. Bird strikes with buildings that are lit, with wind towers, with man-made structures. So that it's really high up there. Light pollution then is involved in that striking. This is a picture of Chicago during one of the migrations. So birds migrate twice a year. In the spring, they migrate to their breeding grounds, and in the late fall, they migrate to their overwintering areas. And a lot of them pass through Chicago. I'll show you how many. But as they're migrating, they do use this magnetic and the celestial cues, just like the dung beetle. But the artificial light of either the direct light from the building or the sky below, created by masses of buildings, really distracts them, and they're attracted to that light. They either hit the building and die immediately, unfortunately. Some are stunned and fall to the ground and recover and live to see another day. Or they keep on circling just like that bat around a flame, and they die too. I'm going to show you some very sad and disturbing pictures in a minute about that. They have less chance of finding food when they're circling, and they just exhaust themselves. And they get predated on more because they're tired and weak. How many birds are we talking about? So remember we said that we've lost about 3 billion birds over the past 50 years. That's a lot. Of those birds, of all land-based birds, about 70% migrate. So not all birds migrate. Some, stay in one place all the time. 70% migrate, and of those, 80% migrate at night. So that means that 50% of all birds, migrate at night. That's a lot of birds that are moving through the night skies when we're sleeping. And when they do this, this is a picture of North America, but birds across the world migrate. They migrate in paths, that have good points that they remember. Often they follow waterways that are easy for the birds to see from up high. And those paths are called flyways, and we have 4 in the US, and we're right on one. We are right there on the Mississippi Flyway here in Chicago. Yeah, right in the middle, right? So you can imagine there's a lot of birds going through here because of that, and there are. But unfortunately, Chicago, due to its location right in the middle of that important flyway, has the unenviable position of being number one in bird deaths during migration because of all of our skyscrapers. It's not an award that we want to have. As a matter of fact, a lot of studies have been done on numbers of birds that die in Chicago because we know the stat is so high. McCormick Place is, most people have been there for the car show or a convention. We know that it's right on the lake. Excuse me. It's situated right there. So as birds are coming over the lake, it's there. They see it, it's lit. It's been a bad spot for bird deaths. 40,000 birds in this study cited at the bottom have died at McCormick Place since 1978. Up to 1,000 a year. That's bad. Last year, it was even worse. There was a conflation of all kinds of issues, including weather, number of birds migrating. There was one day that 1,000 birds died last year during the fall migration at McCormick Place. It was in one building, right? So, and that was a shot of those birds. The Field Museum collects these birds. They send out, I'm going to show you in a second, volunteers to go and collect them and bring them in for study. But there is good news, and that is this little video. Just like we can make changes in our homes that Adam's going to tell you about, commercial buildings and skyscrapers can make changes to their lighting and to their buildings to make it better for birds. So, okay, so you can see McCormick Place, they took action. They installed those bird-friendly decals on the windows, but they also committed to reducing the amount of light on the building. So this is a double whammy situation. By turning, and they knew that they couldn't turn all the lights off, they weren't willing to do that, but even by turning some of the lights off, they were able to make a big change to the number of bird deaths, and you can too if you were to turn your lights off even for part of the night. Or if you wanted to help, you can join this group called Chicago Bird Collision Monitors. These are the folks that go out at 4 a.m. In the morning during the migration season to the skyscrapers in Chicago, and they collect those birds. The ones that are dead, they take to the Field Museum. The ones that are stunned, they take to a wildlife rehab center. So it's a volunteer effort. I'm going to finish up with just 2 slides. I'm going to turn it back over to Adam with the good news of how we can help in our own homes. But before that, I did want to just share with you, it's not just humans, it's not just animals, it's plants that require dark skies at night. And you wouldn't think so, it seems counterintuitive. You'd think that the plants, I mentioned that some bloom at night, but really most of our plants require a period of pure darkness at night to thrive. And that's because plants, they really they have a circadian rhythm just like we do. They set their cycles of, when to bloom, when to lose their leaves, when to grow, based on light timing, intensity, and wavelength. So intensity and wavelength, that's not what we're really talking about with dark skies at night, but light timing is. They need periods of total light and total darkness. So we all know that plants use light to photosynthesize. They use it to inform all their processes like bud bursts, growth, how tall they're going to grow, when they're going to start to grow, when they're going to put out roots, and how much resources they allocate to all the different things going on in the plant's life. But it's not just the length of day, it's the length of night, which is photoperiod. So photoperiod is the length of light and the length of darkness. Photoperiodism is the plant's regulation of its development by those lengths of day and night. So it's photoperiodism that causes a plant to bloom. And there's basically 3 types of plants when you think about blooms. There's those like the ones on the left that bloom during short days. So those are going to be plants like this mum that blooms in the fall. So those are plants that bloom in the spring and fall when the days are short and the nights are long. And other plants bloom when the days are long and the nights are short. So those are your summer blooming plants, like most of our vegetables and this iris here. There's also a third group of plants that aren't impacted by that, but those are a small number. So most plants are either one or the other. They're either short day or long day. As you'd expect, the short day plants, if the day is short and the night is long, they bloom. However, if the day is long and the night is short, they don't bloom. And most importantly, when we're talking about light pollution, even if the day is short and the night is long, when they usually would bloom, if there is an interruption in that nighttime, they don't bloom. So it throws them off. Light pollution in the middle of the night causes those plants not to be able to bloom. Not quite the same with long day plants, it's a little different. So there they required a short period of night and a long period of day to bloom, like the iris. It won't bloom if the night is long and the day is short. But if there's interruption, if there's light interruption at night, it does bloom. So this is kind of the reverse, right? You don't want to not bloom because then you're not going to produce seed and produce more plants. But you don't want to bloom when you're not supposed to either because it's using up too much resource. So neither one is a good situation. So it really, for many plants, it's not just the length of day and night, it's the length of uninterrupted darkness that's required for them to bloom. So when you're flipping those lights on at night, or when we're out driving our cars and the headlights are hitting the plants, that's actually changing their life cycle. But what I like is that there are so many overwhelming problems in ecology and nature. It can really get a little depressing at times. But light pollution is something that we can solve very easily. It's not that painful to fix. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam, and he's going to finish up telling you how.
Thank you, Barb. Thank you, Barb. A recent study showed that moths actually fly with their backs to the light because they perceive the celestial light to be an orientation for them. So when you see them flying around the light bulb, they're actually flying around with their backs to it. And there's who knows Xerces Society? Anybody know that group with respect to bees and such? Well, they did a study that showed that with light pollution, where your native plants are, there's a reduction of 63% in pollination because the moths are being affected by that light, and instead of pollinating the plants, they're circling the light and being subject to predation. And who knows what fledglings like to eat? They like to eat caterpillars, moth caterpillars especially. So when there's less moth caterpillars, there's less birds because there's less fledglings. So like Barb mentioned, it's all the circle of life, right? So it affects not just us as human beings with our circadian rhythm, but our insects and our birds, and we're in an insect and bird apocalypse now. So what can we do to try to make a difference? I'm not going to turn on that bright white light again, okay? Because we don't want to see it. We don't want to see it here, and we don't want to see it outside. But if we want to use a bulb, regardless of what it is, we want to shield it. That's the most important thing we can do at home. I know it might mean replacing your existing fixtures, and we might like those fixtures because they're especially ornamental. But if we want to address light pollution at home, that's the best way. And like I said before, these are both, I bought these both at Home Depot. They were both $30 a piece. So I removed my 5 light fixtures that were similar to this, and I put those up at about, what, $120. I gave my neighbor a case of beer, and he went ahead and replaced them. He did all the electrical work for me, okay? So that's most important. We want to try to have that light shielded. And here's just an example of the fixtures that we can buy. If you go to the DSI website, www.darksky.org, you will see hundreds of dark sky compliant fixtures that you can use on your house. And that website will direct you to a hardware store where you can purchase those online, and they'll be delivered to your house for installation by you or your neighbor. And who doesn't want to be happy? Who has light coming in their windows at night? A lot of us, right? And what are we doing? We're putting down those shades. We're buying dark sky shades, right? To try to shield all that light. Well, what are we doing to our neighbors with your lights that are on all night that are not shielded? So let's think about not just how it affects us, but how we're affecting our neighbors. So when we're choosing that fully shielded fixture, we're making friends. And that's a good thing. All right, so this light bulb stuff. With the incandescents, typically what we were only exposed to was this warmer light. Our friend in the front row asked me. But with the introduction of LEDs, light-emitting diodes, we are now using bright white sunlight at night, which we didn't have before. I'm repeating myself, but it's so important. So when we go to the store and we buy light bulbs, we want to think about Kelvin. That's that K. So when you go to the store and you look at a box of light bulbs, you'll see that there's a menu on the back. You also see that there are labels that are blue, yellow in my bag, and orange. And you also see lumens as compared to watts. Lumens are a brightness score, similar to watts. But with LEDs, because the light is so much more efficient and intense, we actually need a lot less of it to get what we had otherwise had. So let's just look at 40 watts. We got a 40 watt bulb, an incandescent. That equals about 450 lumens, which would be on that little menu box. But to get to 450 lumens, actually all we need is 6 to 9 watts. So even though we see on the box 40, which is just telling us it's going to be less bright, 40 watts is still incredibly bright in an LED world. Okay, so it's not an equivalent, but it is something that we can use basically as a resource for us. But what we want to look at is lumens. Lumens and Kelvin. So there's that box. When you go to the store, and it doesn't matter what store, and it doesn't matter who's distributing or packaging these bulbs, you're going to see 3 colors. Anybody seen that already at the store? That daylight bulb, which is the sun at night, is a blue label. The bright white, which is still too much white-blue light, is that yellow label, and that soft white, which has less blue-white light, is that orange label. And we can see brightness here, lumens, right? 60 watts, 840, 60 watts, 800, okay? It still doesn't take that many watts to get to the brightness level, but it's something that we're familiar with our history with incandescence. What we'd like to do if we want to buy bulbs in a 3-pack is to look for the orange label. That's our best choice. And we want to go with lumens that are basically on the box of 40 watt, basically description for us, knowing what we're used to, which is a less brightness level with the lumens. So buy the box that has soft white, which is 2700 Kelvin, with a brightness level that's not more than 460. And that's going to be all you need. Remember how bright that bulb was? That's a 2700. Tell me that's not enough. That's with 450 lumens. It's removing that blue-white light that disrupts our circadian rhythm and hurts our wildlife friends. And it's also less bright, so we're confronted with less glare. And of course, we'd like to have it in that beautiful shielded fixture. But we'd like to do something better. So what we can do now is we can buy bulbs at 2200 Kelvin, which removes even more of that bright white lights. It gets us back to our old incandescent level. But unfortunately, we don't get these bulbs in the nice 3-pack. You have to buy them individually, okay? So they're going to give us less blue-white light, and they're also going to be less obnoxiously bright. Remember that Tommy ad I showed you earlier? So let's see what it looks like. Still bright, still white, more than enough, right? We're concerned about security, it's still more than enough, but we're being friendly with our health and with our friends, okay? This is really fun. I do this at home. Okay, but there it is. There's your perfect light, your perfect fixture. Okay? Now that costs, with the fixture and the bulb, maybe $35. And these bulbs will last you forever. Their life expectancy is more or less 25 years. And they're very efficient. Okay? What do I do with my clicker? All right, and then we go to the award-winning home, which will all now be yours. Okay? Let's think about reducing how many light bulbs we think we need at night when we're sleeping. Maybe we turn them off when we go to bed. We put them on timers. We put them on dimmers. We put them on motion sensors. Motion sensors are much more better than they used to be. Okay, and then we think about shielding it and choosing the right light bulb. Thank you. So, if you have time, if you'd like to read, there are a couple books that I'd like you to check out. The End of Night, which is a really good book. It's very interesting. It reads really well. It'll tell you everything and more. And a little bit more dry, but a little bit more recent is The Darkness Manifesto. Another good book for you to read. It talks about our circadian rhythm and everything else, and everything that Barb talked about tonight too. Okay? So with that, I'd like to invite Barb back up and we'll answer some questions. So who's got some questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so why did they get rid of the incandescent bulb?
It was not efficient. Yeah. So the LEDs are much more efficient. They're 90% more efficient. Okay. They burn less energy.
Why do they make them so bright?
Because people think you want bright. And unfortunately we do, don't we? All right? So when municipalities are putting those bulbs in, what do they think? That you want bright. That you want to be in a more bright world. You want to be able to walk outside in sunlight at night. Okay? That's why it's more bright. But yes, it's all about energy efficiency. So when you think about burning, if you were to burn an incandescent and an LED for the same period of time, right? The LED would basically use about 90% less fossil fuels to generate that light for you. Okay?
Also, it's kind of a nice tie into the wildlife. Have you ever heard the term biomimicry? It's where features found in nature are leveraged by humans to make something for them, like Velcro. Seeds, like a lot of seeds are dispersed by sticky things that stick to you, and Velcro was designed after that. Incandescent lights are inefficient because they put off a lot of heat. LED lights are cool. They don't waste their energy in producing heat. It's all in light. So it's very similar to the Firefly, which also puts out a really cool, it's cool, yeah, but it's not hot to the touch.
Yeah, so that efficiency that they want to give you, they accomplish that in part by removing that infrared that you don't see with the incandescents. With that infrared, though, you feel it with heat, right? So if you remove those incandescents from your house or your workplace, you feel colder because that light's not providing you with that extra heat. So what these LEDs are is they want as much light power as possible for you. So they're exposing you to more blue-white light. We had some more questions. Yes, young lady.
How do you feel about motion detector bulbs outside?
Well, they're better than not having motion detectors. Motion detectors are much more efficient than they used to be. So if you walk on the sidewalk past your apron, they won't turn on like they used to do. But if you step on the apron, they'll turn on. If you step off the apron, they'll turn off in 10 seconds. Okay? So they're much more efficient, they're a much better choice. So if you want to keep a light on for safety reasons, it's much better to use a motion sensor, a more
I have it in
modern.
mind for my neighbor.
You what?
I said I have it in mind for my neighbor. Their light shines right in my bedroom.
Yeah, and some motion sensors work better than others. They stay on forever sometimes, and they're triggered easily, but the new ones are much better. Another question? Yes, sir.
Yeah. I probably didn't talk about this, and this is probably a longer topic. How getting the municipalities to adopt dark sky lighting, friendly lighting, it's got to be a difficult task, right? How's that going?
It is. I've been working on it for quite a few years. I'd like to try to convince Batavia to think about these kind of things. But municipalities are doing better, okay, when they get educated. But many of our building engineers, our planning departments, whatever the case may be, they don't know a lot of this. So again, they're just thinking brighter and more is better. But we are making strides. So there are dark sky municipalities, and we have municipalities that are now, with their ordinances, having fully shielded fixtures. That's what you see more often than not now. And they are thinking more about the lumens and the color temperature of the light bulbs. Just this past year, Governor Pritzker signed into law what is, in my opinion, the first truly modern dark sky statute. So for all properties managed by the Department of Natural Resources in the state of Illinois, when they change whatever they're using with respect to their light fixtures, etc., they are now by law supposed to use fully shielded fixtures with 2200 Kelvin bulbs with less brightness. Why? Because we have wilderness friends there. So that was just signed into law through some of my help. So we are making some strides.
Great.
All right? Yes, sir.
Once in a while, you can drive by an auto dealership, and the lights blind you as you drive by.
They're horrible.
What's that about?
Isn't there some sort of a regulation?
There should be. Yes. So does anybody want to guess why those bright white lights are on at 2 a.m.? Well, maybe, but
Insurance?
maybe. Pardon?
The work birds moving on the cars?
Probably not. They want, at 2 o'clock when you're driving by that,
I want you to see it.
they want you to see it, but more importantly, they want you to see what color it is. Because at night, our rods come into play. You can talk about this. Tell them about our eyes.
So the human eye and the animal eye is composed of two kinds of cells, rods and cones. And cones are responsible for dim and bright light, whereas rods are that's how you see color. So that's what Adam's referring to at night. You'll still see color because of those cells in your eye.
Yeah, so they want your eye to be able to see color through basically triggering what your eyes would react to during the day. Okay, as compared to at night. We see more grays. Our peripheral vision is actually better at night than it is during the day. That's because of all those millions of years of reproduction and generations of our human body becoming better to champion these things. All right, next question. I know I saw another hand.
I was just wondering, you have like example of 40-watt bulbs. What if you switch to, the equivalent in LED of a 25-watt bulb, which is probably under 6 watt, wouldn't that work too?
Well, if you're
Versus
just,
that one you have.
yeah, if you're thinking about incandescence, and again with incandescence, we used to think about 75, 40, 60, 100. Okay, we thought that was what basically told us what the brightness would be of that bulb. So if we went to a 25 watt bulb, thinking about incandescence, yes, we would have less lumens, and yes, it would be less bright. All right, but still, anything more than 6 to 9 watts, just thinking of the equivalency with lumens, is still very bright.
Also with that first fixture with all the glass, which is pretty much what I have, even though I do use like 25-watt bulbs, I wanted to shade it, it's like I think I'm gonna paint the glass on my, you find some kind of glass paint and paint it, that would be the equivalent of shading, right? But
Well,
I have to buy the new,
Sure. We want to keep the light on the ground. That's where we are. So when I'm walking over here, I'm looking at the ground so that I can see what's there before I trip on it, right? What I'm going to trip on is not up here and it's not up there. So with our fixtures, we want to keep that light on the ground so that we can see what we want to be able to see within that 6 feet, some of us are taller, of our existence here on the planet vertically. So whether you paint or put something better, you're bringing that light down instead of out into our eyes and up into the sky. We'll still have some reflection, so we'll get less reflection with a black surface, and we'll get more reflection with a white surface. So if you're thinking about how bright do I want my bulbs from the context of what your driveway is, you're going to get more reflection, you're going to get more brightness with a white concrete as compared to a black asphalt. Another question? Yes?
Any suggestions for approaching a neighbor in a discreet, kind way that they're not going to, get offended with? Do you have a flyer or maybe literature from your website that you would recommend approaching?
Of course we do. So if you go to www.IDA Chicago, you will see on that website my letters to my neighbors.
And you sign them?
Do I sign them? I do. And I've sent them every year for 4 years now. And my street is darker than any other street in Glen Ellen, Illinois.
What about the guy that has so much lighting he lights your bedroom?
I have not been able to convince him yet. But if you walk on my street at 2 in the morning, there's only 5 houses. There's 30 houses on my street that still have their lights on at night, and most of them have these more amber color. So anyway, what I have done is I've sent I have the luxury of only having 30 houses on my street. It's a very short block. But I sent letters to everybody, not targeting anyone specifically, educating them like I'm educating tonight. And then, of course, I have light bulbs, and if anybody wants to chat with me, I say, let me give you a light bulb. It's not an easy task, and I haven't been able to convince everybody. But there are polite ways to accomplish that. So go to my website and look at those letters, and hopefully it'll help you with your own letter. Otherwise, you just got to let people know by educating them, not necessarily criticizing their choice, right? But by educating them about why you want to try something better.
And I have I've read Adam's letters, and they're excellent. I would like to do something similar because they're wonderful. He does not guilt people, and make them feel bad. He often starts out focusing on the beauty. I mean, we all like beauty, right? We all want to have our lives be beautiful. He talks about, do you like seeing the beauty of lightning bugs on a summer night? Well, if you do, it's better to, and then, he follows up with some facts. So just, we can all agree that we like beautiful things. He always starts out like that. It's a
The
great way to do it.
website again is, say the website again.
www.idachicago.org.
Okay.
Do we start from the beginning? Probably not. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, Barb. But yes, so check that out. And you'll also see there the most recent article that I published involving the McCormick Place fiasco and what McCormick Place is doing to try to address it. Yes.
Okay, well, they're talking about neighbors. My neighborhood's pretty dark, except for a few neighbors here. But the street lights, we have like a street light, not too often, maybe one every block, but one of those has to be right outside my window, my bedroom window. What can we do about, and I don't live around here, I actually have family around here, so I come to the Batavia Library, but I live more like in Oak Lawn and over there in that area. And what can we do about, do we talk to a village or?
You would talk to the village. That would be a good place to start. But you can also call ComEd. So ComEd will respond. They may not respond as quickly as you like, and they may not ultimately give you what you prefer, but they do have shields that they can put on some of these light fixtures to help, especially with backlight. So they're trying to accomplish lighting the street, but unfortunately there's trespass with that light, which they can address with shielding that they can put onto those fixtures.
It's always going to be up really high anyway, isn't it?
Well, the higher you go up, the more, of course, light you're going to have spilling. So it's better to keep the lights at 20 feet or less insofar as you're vertical. There's a host of different good things you can do to accomplish better results. But you can call ComEd.
We don't have ComEd in Batavia though, so I think we have to call the city of Batavia.
Yes, it's the city of Batavia, and unfortunately, Batavia has started to put in, well, it's a mixed bag. They've started to put in quite a few new fixtures that are shielded, that's good. And they don't have those glass bulbs on them, they're not the decorative ones like they have, downtown along the walkways. But they do have the really high lumen, high Kelvin LED lights in them. And one thing you can do, I'm a member of the Batavia Environmental Commission. We suggest things to the city council, and that will be something, because I'm passionate about this, I'm new on that committee, that I would like to get that to change. But it's an educational process and it takes a while. Maybe in your town they have an environmental commission, and that would be another place to raise your concerns too.
Please complete your copy
I
and
think it would be
retain.
great if the Batavia
If you need to
Commission
call for a ride, please make your call now, but your ride will arrive by close-in.
would
Thank you.
provide this program to the city council.
That's my plan.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah. And we'll come and back you up.
All right. I'm going to remember that. Yeah, because it takes a lot of education, just like Adam says, and it's not even expensive. So I think education combined with something that's not that costly is a pretty, hopefully, easy sell.
Yeah, you have to hit your municipality and do it timely. It's already 8:30. We got to finish. Anybody got one more question they have to ask? No? Thanks so much for
Thank you.
coming.
Thank you.
Good luck.